Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final video of this series of retrospectives on the Dark Knight trilogy. I had a really great time talking about Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, two movies that I really love a lot. And now I'm very excited to talk to you guys about The Dark Knight Rises, which is the final movie in the trilogy and is 12 years old now. Wow. I'm understating how hyped people were for The Dark Knight Rises when I say they were hyped. There was so much anticipation for this movie. Everybody I knew was waiting to see what would happen. This was a moment of time where every trailer, every poster, every nugget of information people were diving for. And as the movie was about to release, I feel like we were counting the minutes to the release, which I know sounds crazy, but I'm not joking. Like I would wake up in the morning and be like, 5 more days to go and 4 more days to go. Like it was quite literally like that. I was actually just waiting. I remember the tickets went live and I jumped. I was like, we gotta get tickets like right now, and booked those tickets immediately to see the movie in theaters. And then we all went to go see it, and it's so interesting looking back on that entire experience since then to now. I have rewatched this movie a lot of times along with the other two in the trilogy, and I love revisiting them. There's always something really great with the Dark Knight trilogy when it comes to just exploring what all is being done with the world. And I feel like every single viewing brings, to light a lot of new details that you might have missed before. And I'll say the same about the Dark Knight Rises. Every single time I watch it, I find something new. And I love these 3 movies. I think they're fantastic stories that bring together everything as perfectly as they can. And The Dark Knight Rises, I think, concludes things pretty greatly, which is pretty commendable because when you think about it, it was kind of an impossible hill for this movie to climb. It was following up on The Dark Knight, which was considered the greatest comic book movie ever made at that point of time. And even now is considered the gold, platinum standard for making a movie in that genre. Like, if you're not that, you're the next best thing. And so naturally, making a follow-up to that is no easy task. But what I really respect about The Dark Knight Rises is that they didn't even try to top it, which is a smart move. You don't want to do that. Because I feel like one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, and I've seen this happen before, as I'm sure you have with sequels or second sequels, is that you try to double down on what worked before, and sometimes you lose what made the previous thing special. As a result, what will happen is that your project will end up suffering and it might be considered disappointing. In the case of The Dark Knight Rises, much like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight before it carves out its own identity. It does its own thing. Everything from the direction, to the writing, to the acting, to the visuals, the score, everything about it is its own lane. It's compared to the other two. They're doing what they need to do to tell the stories that they need to tell. The Dark Knight Rises does what it needs to do to tell the story that it needs to tell. And it's what makes this trilogy also so interesting. Every viewing is a unique experience, and there's something to be enjoyed in different avenues across the board as a result of that. One of the good things about The Dark Knight Rises for me is also the fact that it builds on the thematic depth of the other 2 movies very well, especially when it comes to what exactly is, going wrong with everything that our heroes may be doing. The Dark Knight ended on a bit of a bittersweet way. It ended with the fact that the city had been lied to. Harvey Dent was proclaimed as a hero that he did not go down as, and Batman had taken the fall for him. It's been 8 years. There's no Batman in Gotham anymore. Harvey Dent is an icon. There's an act named after him, which has locked up 1,000 inmates, and organized crime has pretty much shut down. It's come to a point in the city where small crimes are not really given much credence. Like Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, when he first appears, he goes up to Gordon and he's like, the congressman's wife said that he didn't come home after a party, and Gordon's just like, that's a job for the police now? It's like, at some point we're gonna be doing mundane things, because suddenly this is trivial compared to the stuff that they've dealt with. But it's also built on a powder keg, because the law is a lie. And because the truth is that Batman did kill Harvey Dent, but that's because he was trying to save Gordon's son. And Harvey Dent had already killed a bunch of people in the process. And so that truth is something that eventually does come out, and how the characters handle it and the way that foundation is, broken apart at Gotham with everything that proceeds after that is excellently done. And that's where Bane comes in, which is a smart choice for one reason, because when you think about these movies, up until now you had a more mental threat for Batman to deal with. You had a lot of stuff going on with Joker, but most of the time it was dealing with stuff that was, affecting their morality and codes. In the case of Bane, he represents a physical threat, and being a part of the League of Shadows and then excommunicated because he was too much, for even Ra's al Ghul to handle. When he eventually comes to Gotham, that skill set is something that is made apparent very quickly, and something that Bruce is like, yeah, I can handle this. I can just fight harder, right? But the problem is that this movie, a lot of the characters' decisions are built on this sense of safety. Like, wait, we've done this before, we know what we're doing. And so mistakes are made in the process. It leads to a couple of great moments with Alfred as well. There's some scenes with him that are genuinely wonderfully done, and the dialogue exchanges between him and Bruce are fantastic. Basically just telling him you're not the same guy anymore, and warning him about what's about to happen, and Bruce still going ahead with it. It's very well done. And I like the fact that the movie makes that rise feel worth it, because when he first heads out as Batman, he thinks he's got this and he's back to his glory days, but he gets pummeled by Bane, brutally so, in a very aggressive fight that happens with very less use of music until like the very end. There's nothing like that. It's just the sounds of, punches and yelling, and it's visceral stuff. And eventually he's condemned to a pit where he has to rebuild himself. It's, very well done storytelling, and it gives you a lot of time with Bruce Wayne. And I think Christian Bale is the best he's ever been in this movie as Batman. I think you get some of the best work of this trilogy out of him over here, and he's exceptional. Brings the story around really, really well, sort of refinding his fear and regaining what made him Batman in the first place. I love that part where he has to get out and eventually the bats start circling over him. Straight out of a comic book right there. That was beautiful. Excellent moment there. And Bane, oh geez. You know what? Tom Hardy, excellent as Bane. And I will also say this while I'm at it, never really had a problem with the voice. I thought he sounded okay. I think this is a polarizing thing though. I know a lot of people have issues with this, but I didn't really have too many issues with it. I kind of got what he was saying the whole time. But yeah, it's a loud movie. I mean, in terms of the dialogue that he has and all that. And yeah, I thought he did a fantastic job though. That physicality and that ferociousness that he brought to the character was excellent. And it's also a very grounded version of Bane compared to the comics, and the way they pulled that off was exceptional. Blake, I already mentioned, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I really liked him in the movie, and I liked his connection to Bruce. Like, hey, we've both been orphans, and I can kind of put together that you're Batman. That entire explanation I actually quite like. It's that look in your eyes, Which is not something that surprises me, because there is the shared experience aspect that does sometimes play into just our real lives. Like, if you meet someone who has something similar to you, you'll notice that too. That person will pick up on it instantly, like, you too, right? And then it's like, yeah, how did you know? It's like, look in your eyes. And it's something that you don't really consider until it really happens to you. And I say that as someone where it has happened to me. The character handling across the board is so good here. Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle, especially. I loved her in this movie. I thought she was fantastic. I don't actually call her Catwoman, because she's more Selina Kyle in this movie. But I love what she did with the character. I thought she played it very slickly, and I loved her dialogue. Her performance was excellent. She was super, super good in this. And yeah, I thought she was an excellent Catwoman. And really brought a lot to the movie in terms of like the charismatic personalities, which is saying something considering this movie is already loaded with a bunch of very charismatic personalities. I also really liked Marion Cotillard as Miranda Tate, who eventually you get to know as Talia al Ghul. I thought she did a great job too, and I think I'll talk more about her in a second. I'll get there. The action in this movie is also so great. That outstanding opening sequence with the plane being hijacked by Bane and then being crashed. Fantastic stuff. That scene is a showstopper for sure. I have debates every now and then on what my favorite opening to a Nolan movie is. Either it's the bank robbery scene in The Dark Knight, it's this scene in The Dark Knight Rises, or it's the opera scene in Tenet. I feel like I arguably might give the point to Tenet, but it might actually be this scene. I think it's just such a brilliant opening to the movie, and immediately sets the stage for how intense things are going to be. The big chase that does happen around Gotham, really, really great. The stock exchange sequence is phenomenal. Cool little tidbit over there. That's Glenn Powell, the security badge taken from this poor man. Now everybody knows him for Top Gun Maverick and Hitman and Twisters, and yeah, God bless, man. He's doing a great job right now. Speaking of actors who are in here for a bit, Ben Mendelsohn as Daggett. You know, it's funny, was seeing him in this movie, and then later I saw him in stuff like Rogue One, and I was like, that's that guy. You know, it's really fun how it works like that, you know, those connections that your brain suddenly makes. And there's a lot of that with the Dark Knight trilogy. You might see an actor here and there, and suddenly you'll see them in a big thing and go, I saw you in that. It's so cool. Like, the kid in Batman Begins is Joffrey in Game of Thrones, which is... Hans Zimmer's score in this movie is visceral stuff. He did it solo, this one, not with James Newton Howard. Some really, really great stuff over here, especially with all that, you know, Dishi, Dishi, Basara, Basara chanting, which is going on with Bane. But I also love the one little anecdote, like he gave this at some, I don't know if I can find the source for it, but he was talking about how there's a third note to Batman. And if they ever got to do the trilogy, the third note would be in this movie. It's in this movie. If you listen to the Dark Knight theme, the Dark Knight Rises theme, listen carefully and you'll hear that note. When Bane takes over Gotham, that second half is just genuinely remarkable. I mean, especially when it comes to that football stadium being blown up, all the bridges being blown up, the reactor that Bruce has made, and now it's been converted into a nuclear bomb. The stakes are as high as they can be, and the movie establishes that very, very well. And eventually the failed state that Gotham pretty much becomes as the bomb is ticking away to basically just obliterate it all and start from scratch is something that is definitely extremely tense and very well executed. And at the whole time of that, Bruce is trying to rebuild himself in that pit. And he's also learning about Bane's backstory, which is where Talia al Ghul comes in, and that's who, you know, like I said, that's who Miranda really is. And that entire storyline, I think, is an interesting one. It ties into Batman Begins perfectly. It brings the whole League of Shadows element around in full circle, with Bane, of course, being an excommunicated League of Shadows, assassin. But at the same time, I really like the fact that the movie is able to create this, you know, great through line with the other two. And so while it remains its own individual thing, it manages to bring the story around in the best way possible and, you know, connect all those dots together in the best ways. And that finale, that whole final about 40 minutes or so, is outstanding. The whole war sequence that happens on Wall Street, the cops and the mercenaries attacking one another, thousands of extras just going at it, fantastic stuff. Batman and Bane fighting in the middle, heart-stopping. I mean, I remember seeing that for the first time. I was just on the edge of my seat. I was like, what's gonna happen? Because the trailers sort of cut away at one point when there's a punch being thrown and you're like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next? Really, really great stuff. Then of course there's the Talia reveal, and then that whole chase that happens to get the nuclear bomb back to the reactor to stabilize it. It's also fantastic stuff. I mean, it's all visually awesome, and Selena on a bat pod just taking out tumblers and trying to get to the truck, also really, really cool. The final moments I really love of this movie, because I think it's a poignant way to wrap everything up. You have Batman sacrificing himself with the bat taking the bomb out to sea. There's that great moment between him and Gordon before that, which I really love, about, you know, how a hero can be anyone. Even someone who is just putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended. And that's all he says. And of course, that's when it clicks in Gordon's mind, like, oh, it's Bruce Wayne. I loved that. It was a beautifully done moment. And then, you know, Batman flying out, he's treated as the hero eventually. And, you know, Bane, of course, is dead now, thanks to Selena. She shot him with the Bat Pod's guns. And Talia's dead too. I will say this, people talk about nitpicks in these movies, like, you know, Bruce Wayne getting back into Gotham and all that. I'll address that one real quick. Batman Begins had him getting out of Gotham. He kind of smuggled his way out. I'm sure he reverse engineered that. That's it. Yeah, I think you got that explanation over there. Gordon sending every cop into the sewers. We just talked about this idea of overconfidence and safety, knowing you know what you're doing, but not really. Bane plays on that and it backfires and they all get trapped under. So there you go. So really it just comes down to two minor things. I don't think this line needs to be in the fight before it happens.
So you came back to die with your city?
No. I came back to stop you.
I also think you could have used a different take for Talia's death. Seriously, there was no other take of that. That was the one point where you know, they saw that and they went, we got it. Granted, it's one frame, it's one moment, it's, you know, the rest of the performance is good. It's just that one thing where I was like, really? Anyway, I also did like the Blake detail, the fact that, you know, his full legal name also includes Robin. Like, yeah, great. I you know what? I actually like this because I think his character was cool, and I also liked the camaraderie that he had with Bruce throughout the movie, and I thought that they got along really nice. Like when I was seeing the connection between the two of them, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Like I would expect the keys to be handed over to him if something should go south. And I thought they did a really, really good job of making that happen, that transition. I don't think we'll ever see what happens next, but I do like it having that hopeful ending. Like, hey, there's something good down the line for the city. Like, it's gotten that reset button, and now no more lies are there. There's no more, you know, there's nothing else to you know, worry about. Like, you can just build on this and you can create something new, something promising to, you know, reclaim the foundation on. And I love the bookend with Florence and Alfred seeing Bruce across the cafe being okay. He's with Selena. Selena's got the pearls that she tried to steal early on in the movie. By the end of The Dark Knight Rises, I was very happy with the movie. I thought it was a fantastic conclusion to the trilogy. And like I said, yeah, it has some nitpicks and little itty-bitty things over there for sure, but I think as a trilogy, the whole story works phenomenally, and I love revisiting these movies, and I hope you guys enjoyed looking back on these movies with me. That's about where this ends. It has been a journey and a half. This video has gone on long. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure talking about the Dark Knight trilogy. Let me know your guys' thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises and everything so far, and, you know, what else you'd like to see in this video series. As always, if you like this, guys, please do subscribe. Thank you very much once again, and I'll see you guys in the movies.